Hi and welcome to India Reads. Today we're going to read chapter 2, book 2 of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Book 2, On the River Grain Among the Quedi. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today would be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. None can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at a relative or hate him. We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back to him, these are obstructions. Whatever this is is that I am. It is flesh and a little spirit and an intelligence. Throw away your books. Stop letting yourself be distracted. That is not allowed. Instead, as if you were dying right now, despise your flesh. A mess of blood, pieces of bone, a woven tangle of nerves, veins, arteries. Consider what the spirit is air and never the same air, but vomited over and gulped in every instant. Finally, the intelligence. Think of it this way you are an old man. Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against faith and the present, and to mistrust the future. What is divine is full of providence. Even chance is not divorced from nature, from the inweaving and enfolding of things governed by providence. Everything proceeds from it, and then there is necessity and the needs of the whole world, of which you are a part. Whatever the nature of the whole of the world does, and whatever serves to maintain it, it is good for every part of nature. The world is maintained by change in elements and in things they compose. That should be enough for you. Treat it as axiom. Discard your thirst for books, so that you won't die in bitterness, but in cheerfulness and truth, grateful to the gods from the bottom of your earth. Remember how long you've been putting this off, how many extensions the God gave you, and you didn't use them. At some point, you'll have to recognize the world, what the world it is that you belong to, what power rules it, and from what source you spring. That there is a limit to the time assigned to you, and if you don't use it to free yourself, it will be gone and never return. Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, like doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice, and on freeing yourself from all other distraction. Yes, you can. And if you do everything as if it were the last thing you were doing in your life, and stop being aimless, stop letting your emotions override what your mind tells you, stop being hypocritical, self-centered, irritable, you will see how few things you have to do to live a satisfying and reverent life. If you can imagine this, that's all even the gods can ask of you. Yes, keep on degrading yourself, soul, but soon your chance at dignity will be gone. Everyone gets one life. Yours is almost used up. And instead of treating yourself with respect, you have entrusted your own happiness to the souls of others. To external things distract you, then make my time for yourself to learn something worthwhile. Stop letting yourself being pulled in all directions, and make sure you guard yourself against the other kind of confusion. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse towards are wasting their time, even when hard at work. Ignoring what goes on in other people's souls, no one ever came to grief that way. And if you won't keep track of what your own soul is doing, how can you ever be? How can you not be unhappy? Don't forget these things: the nature of the world, my nature, how I relate to the world, what proportion of it I make up. That you are a part of nature, and no one can prevent you from speaking and acting in harmony with it always. In comparing sins the way people do, Theophractus says that the ones committed out of the desire are worse than the ones committed out of anger, which is good philosophy. The angry man seems to turn his back on reason out, out of a kind of pain and inner convulsion. But the man motivated by desire, who is mastered by pleasure, seems somewhat more self indulgent, less manly in his sins. Theophractus is right, and philosophically sound. To say that the sin committed out of pleasure deserves a harsher rebuke than the one committed out of pain. The angry man is more like a victim of wrongdoing, provoked by anger, by pain to anger. The other man rushes into wrongdoing on his own blood, moved to action by desire. You could live your life right now. Let that determine what you do and think. If the gods exist, then to abandon human nature is not frightening. The gods would never subject you to harm. And if they do not exist or don't care what happens to us, then what would be the point of living in a world without gods of providence? But they do exist. They do care what happens to us and everything a person needs to avoid real harm that they have placed within him. If there was anything harmful on the other side of death, they would have made sure that the ability to avoid it was within you. If it doesn't harm your character, how can it harm your life? Nature would have overlooked such dangers through failing to recognize them or because it saw them but was powerless to prevent or correct them. Nor would it ever, through inability or incompetence, make a mistake to let good and bad things happen indiscriminately, to be good and bad alike. But life and death, success and failure, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all these happen to good and bad alike, and they are neither noble nor shameful, hence neither good nor bad. The speed at which all of them vanish, the objects in the world, and the memory of them in time, and the real nature of the things our senses experiences, especially those that entice us with pleasure or frighten us with pain, are loudly trumpeted with pride. To understand those things, how stupid, contemptible, grimly decaying, and dead they are, that's what our intellectual powers are for. And to understand what those people really amount to, whose opinions and voices constitute frame, and what dying is, and that if you look at it in the abstract and break down your imaginary ideas of it by logical analysis, you will realize that it's nothing but a process of nature, which only children can be afraid of. And how man grasps God and what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. Nothing is more pathetic than the people who run around in circles, delving into the things that lie beneath and conducting investigations into the souls of other people around them, never realizing that all you have to do is to be attentive to the power inside you and worship it sincerely. To worship it is to keep it from being muddled with turmoil and becoming aimless and dissatisfied with nature, divine and human. What is divine deserves our respect because it's good. What is human deserves our affection because it's like us, and our pity too sometimes for its inability to tell good from bad, as terrible a blindness as a kind that can't tell white from black. Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years or 10 times that, remember you cannot lose another life than the one that you're living right now, or live another one than the one that you're losing. The longest amounts to the same as the shortest. The present is the same for everyone. It is the loss that is the same for everyone, and it should be clear that every brief instant, all is all that is lost. You cannot lose either the part of the future. How could you lose what you don't have? Remember two things, that everything has been the same and keeps recurring. It makes no difference whether you see the same things recur in 100 years or 200 or an infinite period. That the longest lived and those who will die soonest lose the same thing. The present is all that they can give up. And since it's all that you have and what you don't have, you cannot lose. Everything is just an impression, said Monimus the cynic, and the response is obvious enough. But the point is a useful one if you take for what it's worth. The human soul degrades itself. Above all, when it does its best to become abscess, a kind of detached growth on the world, to be disgruntled at anything that happens is a kind of cessation from nature that comprises the nature of all things. When it turns its back on another person or sets out to do harm, as the souls of the angry do, when it's overpowered by pleasure or pain, when it puts a mark and does or says something artificial or false, when it allows its action and impulse to be without a purpose and to be random and disconnected, even the smallest things to be ought to be directed towards a goal. But the goal of rational human beings is to follow the rule and law of the most ancient of communities and states. Human life, duration momentary, nature changeable, perception dim, condition of body decaying, soul spinning around, fortune unpredictable, lasting frame uncertain. Sum of the body and its parts are a river, the soul a dream and mist. Life is warfare and a journey from home. lasting reputation is oblivion. Then what can guide us? Only philosophy, which means making sure that the power stays within, stays safe and free from assault, superior to pleasure and pain, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly and with posture, not depend on anyone anyone else is doing something or not doing it, and making sure that it accepts and happens from what it is dealt as coming from the same place that it came from. Above all, that it accepts death in a cheerful spirit, as nothing but the dissolution of all elements from which each living thing is composed. If it doesn't hurt the individual elements to change continually into one another, why are people afraid of all of them changing and separating? It's a natural thing, and nothing natural is evil. So we've come to the end of chapter 2 or book 2. Let's summarize. What does Marcus Aurelius say here? He says that accept your nature, accept inevitability, accept providence, believe in the providence and God, believe in yourself, don't get swayed by other people's opinions. There is no good or bad, it's your impressions that make good or bad. There are a few other important lessons from the book. One of them, and I guess the most important thing, is tell yourself every day in the morning when you get up that I will not get muddled or swayed or disturbed by gossip, by what happens in other people's minds. I will focus on what happens in my mind. I have today, and that's what everybody has, whether they died today or they live for another 300 years. What is lost today is lost for everybody, and it does not matter how long you live or how short you live. So make full use of this. Understand it, accept it. That's it for chapter book 2. We'll catch up soon for book number 3. Thank you.